Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, wherever you are listening to the podcast from. Welcome back to another episode where today it is the 2025 Brazilian Grand Prix preview in what will be a pivotal moment in this 2025 championship. One of my favourite tracks to go to, there's always something that happens there, and people ask the question, why is Interlagos so interesting? What happens? What is the magic around Interlagos? Well, there's a video for it, which is right now. Of course, Interlagos is special for a number of reasons, but I think going into it this year makes it even more special. You've got three drivers in the fight for the championship, separated by only 32 points. It's also a sprint weekend. It's also raining. It's also the last part of, I suppose, the upgrade packages which people will bring to certain circuits. So pretty much all the cars are level. Everyone's in contention. It's not just the championship leaders which are in contention for the win. It's also the Mercedes. It's also the Ferraris. There are a lot of people that could be in the chance of winning it this weekend. Not just for the main race, but also the sprint race. So I think we will be in for a blockbuster of a weekend. But let's start with the different talking points. And I think, of course, going into this weekend, we can't, I suppose, eliminate any. We can't go and do this podcast episode without talking about the championship fight. After Mexico, yes, Max won in Mexico. It would have been different, but regardless, I think he's done enough to still keep him in contention. If we look at the gap between himself and the two McLarens, it's only 31 and 32 points respectively. If Max was to go this weekend and win the sprint race and the main Grand Prix, it will bring him back into contention for the championship, no matter where the two McLaren drivers finish. And I mean, if we look at the two McLaren drivers just going into this weekend, yes, Lando's come off a very, very strong weekend, and he's come off a decent run performances, which kind of puts him as arguably the favourite going into Abu Dhabi. But if we look at the other side of the garage, Piastri is sort of struggling. You look at his previous finishes, two P5s in Austin and in Mexico. You look at Singapore, finished P4. You look at Baku at DNF. The last time he actually got a podium was in Monza, which is coming up to 2 months ago. Which, in a championship fight, yes, maybe, I suppose, you don't need to be winning every race out there. But what you do need to be doing is at least being consistent with your performances, being on the podium week in, week out, which is what Lando's doing. You look at Lando, he's been on a podium run since Baku, and Baku was if we take Baku out, it goes all the way back to Monza. So, I mean, it's a sort of, I suppose, difference. It's a swing of, I suppose, what's the right word? It's a swing of, I suppose, motivation almost. It's a swing of performance. I feel if we look at, I suppose, the first couple of races this year, and Piastri was on fire. You look at that run from, I think it was maybe Bahrain to Miami. He won pretty much every race. He was finishing on the podium consistently, and this swing of, I suppose, motivation, this swing of performance from one side to the other, is part of racing. And I think the better drivers, the drivers that make world champions, are people that can ride the storm. Going into this, Piastri has to finish on the podium. If he does not finish on the podium in either the sprint race or, more importantly, the Grand Prix, then I do think that he might be in a spot of bother. If we look back to last year, he did finish P9, which probably won't, favour him the most, and he won't look back on it with, I suppose, a sort of confidence going into this weekend. But regardless, it's a weekend which he needs to perform in order to keep his championship hopes alive, because if Lando continues the way he does, then in all honesty, he could run away with this championship. And it is weird to say, even though we've had, swings of confidence in this championship fight, but Piastri has to win this, definitely. There is no shadow of doubt. He has to win this, or he has to be on the podium at least. It's a minimum. Do I think he will finish on the podium? Well, you'll see in my predictions later on. We've also got just little bits in the news. Williams have rebranded themselves from next year. They've got a whole new logo to go with this new, I suppose, change of philosophy. You've got James Giles that came in 23, in 24. He's done a phenomenal job. And in part of this rebranding, reconstruction progress, I think 26 is sort of a year of change, a year of revolution for the Grove-based team. The full name, the official name of Williams from next year will be Atlassian Williams Racing, their title sponsor. And just making way, going into this new, I suppose, also era of cars. We've also got Pirelli, who've come out in the press this week talking about their, I suppose, openness to a mandatory two-stop race throughout the calendar. Not like this year where Monaco was the only two-stop race which was mandatory. But obviously Monaco, yes, it didn't work, but that was mainly because it's just difficult to overtake in the first place. So they didn't really tackle the main problem, but rather kind of, I suppose, use that problem to its advantage in that sense. We've also had the Mexican, I suppose, Federation of Racing come out and openly criticize the FIA. If you were around for last week's Mexican Grand Prix, you will know that Liam Lawson had a close encounter with the Mexican marshals going into turn one after the virtual safety car was deployed. He basically was, because he had to pit, he caused the virtual safety car, he had to pit, he was far behind the rest of the pack, and in some sort of miscommunication between the FIA and the marshals, there were marshals on the track as Lawson was heading through turn one, and it was a worrying moment for all parties involved, and ultimately Lawson was angry as he should be on the radio, asking why there were sort of marshals on the track when there's cars around, and whilst the FIA blames the Mexican Federation for this and Mexican Racing Federation for this, they've come back and said that it's actually Lawson's fault for some reason. I don't even know why. I don't even know how. In this situation, which kind of leaves a little bit of a somber feeling for the FIA. Okay, back to this weekend. Interlagos. Why is it special? Why is it difficult? There's many factors involved. I think if we just look at the circuit itself, it's very difficult to drive. Lots of undulation, lots of curves, lots of straights, and I think that also when it comes to overtaking, it is superb for overtaking. It is a great example of an old track which is perfect for overtaking. You've got to run into the center S's in turn 1. You've also got to run into John Sao in turn 4, and which are two perfectly brilliant places to overtake. You can also use that middle sector to get really nice and close to the driver ahead. And in the wet, every corner is an overtaking spot, which is leads me on to my another thing, which it rains a hell of a lot in Sao Paulo. It's a place where 1 minute it could be thunderstorms, the next minute it could be 30 degrees, and with that sort of, I suppose, change in weather, it really proves tricky for engineers and strategists alike to kind of dictate and kind of make a straightforward plan. It is never straightforward when it comes to the weather, which makes it a hell of a lot more interesting. If we look at last year, 2024, the torrential rain that came on the Sunday, and the Saturday as well, which delayed qualifying to Sunday morning, really did prove, I suppose, pivotal in the championship. Yes, Lando took pole, but Max, with the rain advantage, could maneuver his way through the pack from 17th to 1st. And ultimately, whilst Lando was down in P7, it kind of ended his championship hopes, because the next weekend he won in Vegas. So yeah. Then if we look at also just specifically this year, you've got the title fight, but not just the title fight. You've also got teams now in the mix which can take points off the title challenges. All the teams now are at a point where they don't want to develop anymore, and they are more focusing on next year than this year. This means that pretty much any team could really just come rock up this weekend. I'm talking about the top four teams and run away with it. We've seen it in Singapore with Mercedes. We saw it last year. Last weekend in Mexico. Ferrari looked quite strong. Lando was on a different level. Anyway, but then we saw in Austin again. We saw Red Bull make the most of their setup and absolutely run away with the race victory. Coming into Brazil with a sprint weekend, if, for example, a title challenger like a Lando, like an Oscar, has an off weekend, and Max doesn't even win the race but finishes on the podium, it opens up even more to this. And also, throw in a sprint race, we've got not one but two opportunities for people to capitalize on points, and they will. It's also the end of the season, which makes points ever the more important to try and get higher in the championship. As people are, I think there's only two more sprints left. Yeah, here in Qatar, and with the rain and with overtaking perfect here, people do want to make the most out of these opportunities. If we look at our predictions, then let's go for sprint qualifying and sprint race. I'm going to go for a sprint qualifying pole to Lando. I think he will also win the sprint race with Verstappen and Leclerc qualifying P2 and P3. Verstappen will finish P2, but I do think Kimi Antonelli will finish third in the sprint race. If we look at qualifying and the main Grand Prix, do I think that any of the title challengers will win and take pole? Absolutely not. I don't think they will. I think whilst Lando will finish P5 and Verstappen will take second in qualifying, P5 in qualifying and P2 in qualifying, I think that Charles Leclerc will take pole by a decent margin with his teammate in third and Russell in fourth. Well, I think he will convert that into a victory? Absolutely not. I think George Russell will win this weekend. I think that Mercedes will unlock some sort of potential in their car, and they will go and deliver, which is what they definitely need to do. Verstappen, I think, will finish P2, whilst Leclerc will make it P3, and I think there'll be no McLaren drivers on the podium, with Norris in P4 and Antonelli in P5 and Piastri far away down. If we're talking about the middle of the race, I'm going to say that Piastri, Norris and Verstappen will be in the top three with Leclerc and Hamilton. That's just based on vibes, and I think that also if Piastri, as I do think he will try something completely different, I think he'll be leading at the middle part of the Grand Prix. Biggest good surprise then, who do you think I'm going to go for? I'm going to go for Mercedes. I am backing them to take the victory. I think Russell will have a great weekend, so will Antonelli, and I think that they will be up there, and they will be, more importantly, taking points away from those title challenges. Biggest flop though, on the other hand, and I'm going to say Lewis Hamilton. He's been absolutely superb around Interlagos throughout his career. He loves the track, he loves the place, but with this Ferrari car and him not having the best of years, best of seasons, I think that it will be very difficult. Craig's prediction, and I'm going to say the top three in the driver standings the gap between the top three will go down to 26. Or under 26 this weekend. That's how much I am willing that there will be much to change in this championship fight. Anyway, I think that will wrap up today's podcast episode. Make sure to like and subscribe, and have a simply lovely day. Goodbye.